Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just finished watching Loki episode 4 season 2, and wow. The episode ended and I sat there kind of stunned for several minutes because I can't believe some of the stuff that they did in this episode. This kind of reminded me of watching Multiverse of Madness for the first time. Some of the surprisingly graphic without showing, you know, a whole bunch of blood, but still like real graphic type imagery, or at the very least like implications of horrific things. And this episode does that twice. Wow. Okay, so where do we let's just jump into this part. Okay, so they have Victor Timely at the TVA, and they manage to convince him to help them. And they play around with a lot of fun stuff where he meets Ouroboros, and they kind of nerd out about like, oh, you inspired me with your book, and he's like, well, I wrote my book based on your work. And so it was kind of like that, you know, tail snake eating its own tail thing, where like, which one came first, you know? So they had like a fun moment there. And just a lot of playing around with Victor Timely type stuff, you know, like, of course we don't know how much we can trust him, how good of a guy he actually is. And I think this episode established that, like, okay, he was actually seemingly a straight up guy, you know, like, you know, we couldn't tell how shady he might have been because he kind of tricked Ravonna and he kind of tricked Miss Minutes, and he managed to escape from them. And you know, so you're like, is he evil already? Is he just messing with everyone? Who even knows? But he seems to be kind of on the up and up, really, because he's helping them with their device. He has that little sphere thing that he had worked on in his own time, and that ends up being exactly what they need to basically go back out there with the suit and walk down that giant walk path and aim this thing back at the thing. And we're kind of repeating what we did in episode 1. And I was like, okay, so they just have to go back out there and expand the loom. And they kept on talking about how they have to make the rings of the loom bigger, right? And I kept on thinking, okay, so you're gonna shoot some PIM particles at it maybe, or something like that. And no, that's not what ended up happening. But anyways, they went through all this work to make this device, and then at a certain point, Victor gets captured again by Miss Minutes and Ravonna, who have now shown back up at the TVA, because Ravonna, it's been revealed that Ravonna, like a lot of people theorized, was indeed in a relationship with He Who Remains, and she seems to have been like his top lieutenant in, you know, whatever the war was, the multiversal war against other kings. And then for whatever reason, He Who Remains erased everyone's memories, and so she's all pissed off now because she's like, oh, my memories got erased, I didn't know about any of this. So she's all betrayed. So now it's just Ravonna and Miss Minutes. They go back to the TVA, and there's a horrifying sequence where they're trying to convince everyone that was arrested, all of is it Paradox? Dox's people? I think it's her. Anyways, everyone who was arrested during that whole thing in like episode 2, Ravonna and Miss Minutes are trying to convince them to help them take over the TVA, basically. Like, all right, we'll be in charge. We'll fix everything. We'll start pruning all the timelines. And they refuse. So what do? Miss Minutes activates that orange box that traps you, and then it gets smaller and smaller until you get squished. And you know, something that this episode did is that it paid off a lot of stuff that was set up. So this was the first thing that they paid off, was that they introduced the cube that gets smaller and smaller, and you know, it's basically a torture device. But they just didn't stop it, and we don't see it, but you hear the sounds of probably at least like 12 or 15 people that were in that room getting squished together inside one giant cube until all you hear is this liquid sounds and all their screaming and stuff. So pretty horrifying. You know, I was like, that is extreme for this show. And the only one who does not get squished is X5, who agrees to work with Ravonna. So they kidnap Victor Timely, and they get him to explain how they can fix the loom, and basically they're gonna do the same thing that the other group is doing, but they just want to take over. They're evil, right? So here's what ends up happening now. First, they end up managing to hack into the system, and they're shutting it all down. So Miss Minutes starts getting all like glitchy and fried up, and she gets rebooted. So they've rebooted the system. So Miss Minutes is kind of taken care of, right? Seemed pretty easy. And then they end up getting the jump on Ravonna, and Ravonna gets pruned, which I assume means she's now back where Eliath was, right? Or like they send you back. So she's not dead. She got pruned. Anyone who gets pruned, they just like we established in the first season, they get sent to that graveyard area where Eliath will eventually try to actually kill you. So that seemed pretty easy, seemed pretty simple. Okay, cool. Meanwhile, Loki is running through the hallways, and he discovers that he is now at the exact moment where he was in the first episode, because everything's going wrong and everyone's like, the alarms are going off, and he sees himself in front of that elevator, so he knows like, okay, I gotta prune myself, and that loop is now closed. Now he's done exactly what he did in the first episode from the other perspective. Now he's the future version of himself. Anyways, so okay, cool, that's taken care of, right? So that's the second thing that was set up earlier and is now complete. Oh, and the person on the phone was Ouroboros saying, hey guys, get down here. So they get down there with Victor Timely, and they're all kind of discussing like who's gonna go out there in the suit and shoot the thing at the loom. And right about now you're thinking like, okay, so we did this in the first episode, and they've just established like, okay, it's just, you know, it's more dangerous this time, so you got to be faster, right? So you think like, okay, we're just on a time limit, an even tighter time limit, not a big deal. And now we get our third thing that was established earlier and finally paid off: spaghettification. So it was talked a lot about how if you go inside a black hole, or if you get hit by too much of this temporal radiation, you get spaghettified. And Victor Timely now wants to prove himself a hero, which, I mean, this definitely proves that you were a good guy. Like, you weren't up to anything shady, because he gets in that suit, he starts walking, like literally the doors open, and he takes like a couple of steps outside in that temporal radiation, and we see him just burst into strands of brown and red strings, and he is spaghettified. And people pointed out, you can slow it down, you can actually see his skeleton, his rib cages, and like, so like, this isn't just like a Thanos dissolving kind of dust thing. Like, no, this was literally like you're pulled apart, like your skeleton got shown and then your skeleton got pulled apart. Like, you're just, you know. So again, the second time this episode, they're like, Jesus, I don't, like, I know Halloween is like next week, but okay guys, you're going like extreme in this episode. All right, so that's the second thing that they've or the third thing that they set up earlier finally paid off. But now, of course, their whole plan, the whole thing of like the season of like, okay, you know, the multiverse exploded, the loom can't like tie everything into a nice neat strand of time, and so it's all overloading and everything's gonna explode, and we have to get Victor Timely because his aura can do this and that. All the stuff that they had set up trying to do, it's now all ruined. Victor Timely's gone, Miss Minutes is rebooted, you know, everything sucks now, and we see the time loom break apart and destroy, and a giant beam of light, you know, explodes across the time sphere or whatever, and it starts heading towards them, and Loki's just like, I don't know, I don't know what to do now. And the episode ends with this blinding light covering all of them, and that's how it ends. So yeah, I don't know if this means that, you know, now everyone's gonna be displaced in time, and they are gonna be able to do everything again up until this moment, and maybe now this is the new end of time or something crazy, I'm sure. We have 2 episodes left, and this is also the last episode that any critics saw when they were given all those preview screeners, which, by the way, I'll never understand why they give them so many episodes. Like, I understand they're trying to like review a show, but like give them like the first 2. Why would you give them so many? Because, you know, information about this has been out there on the internet, because of course it has, right? Like, so many people saw up to this episode. But in any case, yeah, nobody knows what's gonna happen now. This was an insane episode. We got answers, we got new theories, we got horrifying things shown. Like, this was like a horror movie episode of the show. That's because they really went for it. And yeah, Victor Timely's just gone. There doesn't seem to be any way of getting him back. Miss Minutes was rebooted, and she, like, you know, she went back to being like a little 8-bit clock for a second, and then she was just like offline. So like, yeah, I don't know if she's coming back. Oh, by the way, when they were squishing all those people in that box, Miss Minutes had like the biggest smile on her face, and she was all happy about it, and it was disturbing because of course she's crazy. So yeah, just, I don't know where this season is heading. I don't know what could possibly happen, but basically everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and now it's like, you know, they might, I don't know, like I'm very, very excited to see where this goes, and it feels good being this excited for a Marvel project, because like it feels like this is all leading up to something really important, and I hope I'm not let down. But so far I'm totally in, I'm totally buying into it. This episode was really amazing. You know, there's discussions about free will and being gods and looking over the whole multiverse, and there's all kinds of great things happening. And then, you know, a guy gets burst into a bunch of spaghetti, and then a whole room full of people gets squished into a tiny box until there's nothing left but squishing noises, you know. So like, it's a lot of stuff happened. It was pretty cool episode. Yeah, I've seen some people say that they're just like not jiving with this season of the show, and I don't know, I don't get that. I don't know what else you could have wanted from a Loki season 2, because this is just as insane and timey-wimey and you know, crazy sci-fi concepts that the first season was dealing with. This is just as crazy as any of that stuff, because I don't even, like, we're at the point where like, what is the future of the show or of the multiverse? Like, is this, you know, some people have been wondering, like, where's the King Dynasty at? Because at the end of Quantumania, there are already thousands of kings out there, and they all have like a group, you know, where they meet up in this giant arena. So like, that's out there somewhere, right? Like, across time. Is the TVA aware of that, or has that not happened yet? Maybe all this stuff happening in this season of the show is happening right before the King Dynasty officially becomes a thing. I don't know. I'm so excited to find out, though. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about episode 4 of Loki. Where do you think this is going? Because, I mean, they ended it in a way where like they could just reset the entire timeline. They could just say like, all right, new continuity, because like it definitely felt like a reboot, giant explosion, timeline literally explodes kind of thing. So anyway, so I guess we'll just have to wait and find out what is happening now. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.